environmental experts are keeping a close eye out for waterborne diseases in KwaZulu-Natal following the recent floods. Residents in affected areas have been struggling to get clean water and maintain hygiene. We're now joined by Professor Mike Muller from the Wits School of Governance. Prof, thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. What are we talking about when we talk about waterborne diseases, and what should we understand about them in relation to the wake of the floods in KwaZulu-Natal?
Morning, yes, and to your viewers. Look, it's helpful to think about why we want to have piped water and proper toilets in the first place, because that's where the problem's actually starting. Normally what happens is the water comes into our households or to our neighborhoods clean, safe, ready to use. And if we're lucky, and I know not all parts of Tekwini are that lucky, we have toilets that remove our human waste and get it out of circulation. Now, what happens when you've got a flood? First of all, your water supply gets damaged, and so you no longer have that clean water. And secondly, your toilets stop working. A lot of human waste perhaps gets spilled around in the environment. Now you're vulnerable to all the things that we normally protect you from when we have clean water supply and proper toilets. And there's a whole range of diseases that we can get because we haven't managed to get our human waste out of the environment in which we're living, out of our households. And that's what we've got to deal with now. It can be anything from just ordinary diarrheas all the way through to typhoid and cholera. All of this is preventable. You don't need to suffer it, but it does mean that every household has to work a lot harder to get clean water and to keep their surroundings hygienic.
So all of this is preventable, and in some cases, some communities have been housed in shelters, and water tankers are being provided. From the very basic understanding that I have of even bottled water, that too, you run the risk of contamination. How then should, the relevant authorities proceed with that aspect?
I think the point is not the relevant authorities. This is something that every household, every person needs to take seriously. And, we have the tools to do it. So one of the most important things that we can do in terms of keeping the environment hygienic is soap. Washing of hands when we're handling water and handling food in this kind of situation becomes very, very critical. We have to treat any water that hasn't come from a purified source, like a tap, and you can probably still smell the chlorine. We've got to treat it as probably contaminated and make sure we do something to make it safe to drink. We can either boil it, or we can put a few drops of jik in a 2-liter bottle, leave it to stand for 20 minutes, and it'll then be safe to drink. But it's actually very important to try and make sure that the surroundings are hygienic and that we keep hands and particularly the preparation of food protected from potential contamination. When we look at how cholera is spread, it's just as often spread by people, even things like shaking hands. And we're back to the COVID story. Human contact is one of the most important transmitters of diseases like cholera. And if we keep hands clean and practice good hygiene, we're already halfway to preventing the outbreak of diarrheal diseases in this kind of flood situation.
In the same breath, though, Prof, we are aware that there's some areas in KwaZulu-Natal that are inaccessible, right? And as unbelievable as it is in 2022 in South Africa, some of the remotest places in our country, you find that people don't have access to, basic services. So they'll go to the river to maybe draw water. They'll go to the river to do their laundry. And so people, some of them have learned how to deal with this situation. But in this instance where you have explained that with the flooding, then you find that, perhaps with sanitation, and you find that that can mix up with water, what then people need to look out for in terms of symptoms maybe?
Well, I think we all know what the symptoms of diarrhea are. and when it happens, we need to manage it. So the second important thing, and you mentioned a lot of communities are kind of cut off from all kinds of help that, I heard someone earlier saying, of course, if there's diarrhea, you must get to your health post quickly because it's very easy to manage. Well, if you can't get to your health post, what do you do? And one of the lessons that we've learned, and I've worked in this area a long time in places like Mozambique where we've had real serious disasters after floods. And one of the things that you can do to make sure that if a child gets diarrhea and is looking really sick, there's this very simple solution, and it's the oral rehydration solution, which everyone thinks you have to get in a little packet from your clinic. But actually, you can make oral hydration solution with a tablespoon of sugar, a small teaspoon of salt in a 1 liter or 2 liter bottle, and if the child has diarrhea and keeps drinking this oral rehydration solution, the chances that it becomes very ill and dehydrated can really be avoided. But that's why I say I don't think we must just assume that government and the authorities can do something. We have to help people to manage these problems themselves by giving them good advice and telling them, use your soap. Even that dirty water will be purified when you wash your hands with soap in it. But also, if you have diarrhea, and particularly if you've got young children, use homemade oral rehydration solution. Sugar and salt in the right proportions can work.